Wow.
This is what the 12-team playoff would have looked like, if only, right? You have Florida State making it. They would be in. They would be hosting unbeaten Liberty, two unbeaten teams playing in the first round of the college football playoff. We have Chip Patterson here. Chip covers pretty much anything and everything during college basketball season. We have him filling out brackets. He's going to fill out this bracket for us. Let's pretend, Chip, that this is a year early, and really it's a year too late, but it's a year early, and Florida State's in it. Take us through the first round.
Oh, what could have been. Florida State would be in and have a favorable matchup. I've got Florida State winning against Liberty. Honestly, even if it was Brock Glenn out there, I think the Seminoles, with what they have defensively, would be able to slow down Caden Salter. Oregon over Missouri would be one of the toughest and tightest battles that you have. As Missouri was a thorn in the side of the best teams in the SEC, they could also put up a big fight against the Ducks, but the Ducks have too much firepower. I've got Oregon moving on. Georgia goes up against Ole Miss. I wonder if we had any results that would tell us how Georgia would perform against Ole Miss. Oh, that's right. It was one of the best performances of the year for the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs won that one. I think the Bulldogs will win this one. And again, if there was only a result that would tell us how Ohio State matches up against Penn State, oh, wait, we do. They could not cover Marvin Harrison Jr. then. They will not be able to cover Marvin Harrison Jr. if they have a rematch. I've got the Buckeyes advancing to the next round.
Yeah, and I've heard people say, see, this is why the 12-team playoff is too much, because we've already seen several of these games. This would have been the perfect year, maybe not for the 12-team playoff, but for an 8-team playoff. And now you've got it narrowed down to these 8. Florida State against the team that knocked them out of the playoff, the Crimson Tide.
Oh, man, so much bitterness in this alternate universe from what's happened in our existence. Alabama has a unique position right now because they have a quarterback who is playing with more confidence than any of the other quarterbacks that are currently at the top of college football. Maybe Michael Penix, but the way that Jalen Milroe performs in tight situations is an X factor that I do think matters in the postseason when the money's on the table. And I think that Florida State has a lot of great defensive pressure with Jared Verse, Tatum Bethune. Milroe would be the X factor. I think Alabama would win that game. When Michigan plays Oregon, it would be much lower scoring than a lot of those Oregon games. The Ducks average 44.2 points per game. They ain't going to score that many against Michigan's defense. I think controlling the game with defense in the ground game with Blake Corum, that would advance Michigan onto the next round. Georgia taking on Texas. Texas's, strength is the ability to overwhelm you on the outside with their weapons. Georgia's strength defensively comes in that secondary where you've got Kamari Lassiter, Malachi Starks, Tyke Smith. I think that helps the Bulldogs be able to slow down Quinn Ewers and the Longhorns offense. That lets Georgia make it to the semifinals. And then really one of the only upsets or big ones that we have here, especially in terms of seed, I think Ohio State would find a way against Washington. Very similar principle. What did we see from the Buckeyes this year? It wasn't Kyle McCord being awesome. A lot of it was the silver bullets. It was that defense, and I think that would be a big winner for Ohio State, and they could take out Washington.
So in this hypothetical 12-team playoff that we should have had this year, you've got Alabama against Michigan in one semi, Georgia against Ohio State in the other. Does Michigan get to the title game?
I am not picking Michigan over Alabama in this reality of the 4-team playoff, and I am not picking Michigan over Alabama in this one with a 12-team playoff because this Michigan offense, as Zach Zinter has gone down, as the offensive line has taken some injuries along the way, we've seen the passing game suffer. And I just can't imagine an injured offensive line going up against this Alabama defensive front. Dallas Turner, Braswell, rest of that group would just be wrecking shop. I've got Alabama over that one. And then Georgia against Ohio State. I think this is where the shortcomings of Kyle McCord would really be put on full display. The inability to convert in some of those long distance situations. So I've got Georgia winning that one.
So we're right back to where this whole mess started. Alabama upsetting Georgia in the SEC championship game. That's the title game that you would have in this 12-team playoff. How about the rematch?
Give me Alabama again. Hey, I just think that this Alabama team is operating with some real confidence. You know, there are rating systems, Chris, that in terms of a power rating say that this is the least talented Alabama team since 2010. And yet, look at the heights that they've been able to reach. Look at what they've been able to accomplish and the teams that they've been able to beat along the way. I just think that there is a great coaching job done by Nick Saban. He's got 2 new coordinators. Tommy Rees has done a fantastic job. And, you know, for an Alabama team that, you know, sometimes just overwhelms everybody with its 4 stars and 5 stars and crazy talent, I think it's interesting that here in this, you know, dream season, potentially, the Crimson Tide don't have quite that same level as a 2020, for example, yet they still could hit those 2020 levels. 4-team, 12-team, the way the Crimson Tide are playing, they're probably going to end up as on my short list to win it all.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that since you have them winning this hypothetical 12-team playoff. Got to ask you about the actual playoff. Is Bama your team to beat this year?
I've got Alabama over Texas in Houston, the rematch of that Week 2 game that was so consequential in the college football playoff race. A chance for Steve Sarkisian to go up against Nick Saban again in the biggest stage with everything on the line. I have Alabama over Texas. I have the Crimson Tide winning the national championship.
It's funny. In the 12-team, you've got a rematch of the SEC championship game. In the 4-team, you've got a rematch of a game that actually happened earlier this season with Texas going into Tuscaloosa and winning by double digits. That is Chip Patterson. He can do it for real. He can do it for fake. He does it for fun here on HQ Spotlight, the hypothetical 12-team playoff.